Cheating is a method that can be used to put oneself into an unfair, typically undeserved position of power amongst opposition. This can be because one feels justified in doing so as a result of their repeated failure and they see cheating as their only out, or perhaps somebody can't stand the mere concept of loss, and to cheat would be to completely intercept any threat of losing. The main issue that arises for many people here is that while it is certainly fun to win, what makes competitive activities fun is the stakes. The uncertainty of whether or not you'll come out on top. If you are entirely certain that you're going to win, it's not exactly fun for very long. Knowing that you've cheated to obtain a goal means that your achievements are essentially fake, which hollows out the pride of victory afterward. We've all cheated in tabletop games before, to any degree. Sometimes it's subconscious, but we've all done it. Although winning in something like a casual game of cards with friends isn't genuinely very important to anyone playing, that's not to say that cheating is okay. But ultimately it really is just a game. It's not like the record of a victory will be kept and marveled at. However, in the realm of professional competition, the highest set of goals can become so impressive that some will dedicate a large portion of their lives to achieving them, and to illegitimately take that from someone is a far more severe act of immorality. In this documentary, I'd like to take a look at some of the most fascinating variations of unfair play, so come with me as I explore the topic of cheating. Throughout history, there have been cheaters in all sorts of competitions. Chess is one of the oldest competitive tabletop games, yet it is simultaneously one of the most cordial. Chess has been around for roughly 1500 years, and there are tournaments that people from all around the world regularly attend. Some few of these people inevitably much better at the game than others. The concept of cheating in chess sounds confusing at first. The gameplay is not really something you can deceptively alter, because chess is not about physical skill, rather it's about knowledge. However, chess cheaters are real, but they tend to adopt a very elaborate way of foolproofing. Let's take a look at a recent example of a cheating accusation in chess from just a couple years ago.
Hans, yesterday was a terrible day for you, and today you start out with a masterpiece. How would you summarize it?
Chess speaks for itself.
Is it something special doing this against Magnus, Hans?
Hans Niemann is a chess player who is young for his skill. He entered his first championship at just 9 years old, and at 11, he became the youngest person to win the Mechanics Institute Chess Club Tuesday Night Marathon, which is the oldest chess club in the US. Niemann eventually became a prodigy in the world of chess. His ELO rating skyrocketed as his skill increased rapidly. In 2018, he became eligible for the title of International Master, and during the World Open in 2021, he beat Grandmaster John Burke in a tiebreaker. The win would set his chess rating firmly past 2,600, earning himself the title of Grandmaster, the highest title there is. In 2022, he would face an opponent whose skill set was beyond his apparent capabilities, another chess grandmaster, Magnus Carlsen, who was over twice his age. At just 15, Carlsen had become the youngest person to surpass an ELO rating of 2,600, and at 16, the youngest person to surpass an ELO rating of 2,700, a now former record. By 2022, he had amassed an ELO of 2,846, and at this point in his career, there were only 19 people in total who had beaten him in a tournament. When these two were pitted against each other in a tournament, it seemed obvious who was going to win. The difference in ELO rating seemed to speak volumes. But with Carlsen's unbeaten streak of 53, Niemann managed to beat him. This event shocked everyone, but what seemed more shocking was Carlsen's sudden withdrawal from the tournament. Just 2 weeks later, Niemann and Carlsen had competed again in an online tournament, but what sparked even more controversy was that Carlsen resigned after only one move. Afterward, he made a tweet outright accusing Niemann of cheating. It makes sense at first, the underdog is always suspicious. But did Niemann cheat? Well, there isn't any real proof. The only thing that sticks out as cause for suspicion is that Niemann admitted to having cheated on chess.com as a teenager. He said it was the biggest mistake of his life.
I wanted to gain some rating, I just wanted to get high ratings so I could play stronger players. So I cheated in random games on chess.com. Now, I was confronted, I confessed, and this is the single biggest mistake of my life, and I'm completely ashamed, And I'm telling the world because I do not want any misrepresentation and I do not want rumors. I have never cheated in an over-the-board game. Other when I was 12 years old, I have never, ever, and I would never do that. That is the worst thing I could ever do, cheat in a tournament with prize money.
The more important question, I think, is how would he have cheated in the first place? Unfortunately for him, this story has been turned into a meme. It's been theorized that he used vibrating anal beads to receive signals in Morse code, which would require an accomplice to relay the signals to Niemann. Mike Boyd on YouTube made a video in which he creates a cheating device of his very own, and he manages to fool a high-level chess player himself. It's a great video, I recommend it. It may have been possible for Niemann to cheat, but FIDE International Chess Federation has already cleared him of guilt. A punishment was rather dished out to Carlsen in the form of a €10,000 fine for suddenly withdrawing from the chess tournament without valid reason. If it would be possible to cheat in chess, then surely you can't cheat in something like athletic sports, right? It's all just skill. How would you not only cheat, but get away with it? Well, I think it's about time I made the distinction between cheating and breaking the rules. If someone were to use a vibrator in chess to relay signals, technically they wouldn't be breaking the rules of chess. There is a difference between the rules of how to play a game and also the rules of a tournament, the ones that outlaw things like illegal cheating devices. If you aren't breaking the literal rules of how to play the game, then it becomes a different kind of cheating. The definition of what it means to cheat is act dishonestly or unfairly in order to gain an advantage, especially in a game or examination. When the term is put that simply, what it means to cheat becomes broadened. Easily the most prevalent form of cheating in athletic sports is in the form of doping. Steroid usage can be found across lots of different sports. Baseball in particular has a long history of it. In Major League Baseball, there is a policy that prohibits athletes from using, possessing, or selling any steroids. This extends to human growth hormone and any drug of abuse, which is any substance listed as Schedule II by the Controlled Substances Act. In order to prevent steroid usage in the sport, a urine test is issued to all athletes on a random date each season without warning, in order to avoid illegal preparation of false urine. A supervisor called a collector is to collect urine samples only after the scheduled athlete has drunk fluid that has been officially validated. Despite these measures, no test is absolutely perfect. In fact, while this one may not be necessarily flawed, athletes still can simply use somebody else's urine for the test with enough preparation. Because of this, many athletes over the years have been guilty of using steroids. Sometimes they end up getting away with it, but other times that isn't the case. Barry Bonds is a baseball player who started his career in 1986. He is referred to by many as the greatest baseball player of all time, but eventually his infamous career would end in 2007, and to understand why, we must discuss the steroid scandal he was involved with. In 1984, a man named Victor Conte founded a company called Bay Area Laboratory Cooperative, or BALCO for short. The company was revealed to be distributing banned performance-enhancing drugs to many baseball players, including Barry Bonds. In 2003, Bonds testified to the grand jury that his personal trainer Greg Anderson gave him two different substances he referred to as cream and clear, which he claimed to have been told were flaxseed oil and rubbing balm for arthritis. The prosecutors were suspicious as they had seized calendars from Greg Anderson's home, which had Barry's name and notes about performance-enhancing drugs on them. Another baseball player, Gary Sheffield, testified that he had also received a liquid called the Clear and a massage balm called the Cream from Greg Anderson, sounding identical to what was previously described. In 2004, Anderson and Conte were indicted on 42 counts of distributing illegal drugs and money laundering. But Bonds continued to vehemently deny using any steroids throughout his career, saying the whole scandal didn't faze him at all. In October of 2004, it was revealed that the Cream described by Bonds and Sheffield was a testosterone-based steroid, Anderson later revealing in a secretly recorded conversation that Bonds had used some kind of undetectable performance-enhancing drug during the 2003 baseball season. During another one of Bonds' testimonies in December, he claimed that he didn't know that the Cream and the Clear substances he had used were steroids during his testimony a year prior. In 2005, Bonds admitted his feelings toward the idea of steroid usage, displaying no contempt and practically condoning it. Later on, when a woman named Kimberly Bell, who had allegedly dated Bonds from 1994 to 2003, was subpoenaed to testify in front of a grand jury, she claimed that Bonds admitted to her that a serious elbow injury of his was caused by steroid usage. This prompted investigators to potentially look into whether or not Bonds had lied during his 2003 testimony. In July that year, Conte, the founder of Balco, pleaded guilty to his charges of conspiracy to distribute steroids and money laundering. He did this after making a deal with federal prosecutors, making it much less likely that top athletes such as Bonds himself would be forced to testify about alleged drug use. Anderson then pleaded guilty to the same charges, and both him and Conte were sentenced to 4 months in prison. In 2006, a book titled Game of Shadows written by Mark Finaru Wada and Lance Williams revealed extensive documentation of Bonds' steroid usage. In light of this new information, baseball commissioner Bud Selig claimed to be investigating the claims, but he eventually moved ahead with no plans to actually do so. When the grand jury finally began investigating Bonds on account of potential perjury during his 2003 testimony, the authors of Game of Shadows were threatened with up to 18 months in jail if they were not to reveal their sources. In 2007, Bonds was indicted on 4 counts of perjury and 1 count of obstruction of justice, and though he pleaded not guilty to all 5 charges, he ended up being sentenced to 30 days of house arrest, 2 days of probation, and 250 hours of community service for his prior charges. Skill is something that exists in sports at all levels and across all types, as well as cheating. However, while it is just as skillful, a lessened physicality is found in playing video games.
He could probably do it, so I gotta find a way to harness his power.
That's right, we're gonna cheat.
Cheating in video games has multiple implications. The feature of a cheat code is one of the oldest forms of cheating in video games, and it originates from developers adding them for playtesting purposes. A cheat code usually involves performing some sort of elaborate button combination. But the infamous Game Shark for the Nintendo 64 was an external form of cheating which would involve inserting the device into the console and placing the game cartridge on top of it, allowing you to open up a cheat menu in-game. Cheating in single-player games isn't really cheating. It's not like you're taking a win from somebody. The point of video games is to have fun. If cheating in single player brings someone joy, that's good for them. But if you play online games, you're likely all too familiar with hackers, players unfairly altering the game to give themselves an advantage. People often refer to this as hacking and cheating interchangeably. They mean the same thing in this context. Hacking is generally quite frowned upon. Many online games have systems in place to prevent players from doing so, but again, it cannot work flawlessly. Some games have player reporting systems, and other games have some variations of anti-cheat, which searches a player's computer for anomalies that may be unfairly altering the game. The hacker mindset varies from person to person. Some people do it because they want power, and some even do it just because they see others doing it already. Once everyone's super, no one will be. But sometimes, there isn't really a mindset. Sometimes, hackers do what they do for no reason. The most bizarre example of this can be found as the Bot Crisis in Team Fortress 2. A while back, the Bot Crisis became a serious issue in casual servers. People would host bots with their own money and have them join servers. These bots would be equipped with hack clients, most commonly played on the Sniper class, allowing them to get headshots with machine-perfect precision, killing any player that enters their line of sight, rendering the match pretty much unplayable. Now, imagine this, but in every single casual game you get into. Sounds completely unplayable, right? So you're probably thinking, why would someone pay to host a bot like this? The answer is simple. They derive some twisted sense of satisfaction from taking the fun away. Today, it's not as bad as it once was, but it's still an issue. There's way more to it than this, but if anything, this segment can serve as some kind of awareness. Now, the discrepancy here is that this is a form of hacking done purely for the sake of causing a disturbance. Cheating in games is most commonly found as giving oneself an advantage, but sometimes it goes beyond just that.
SpaceUK, who is the top player, it was found out that he was a cheater, and it was all under everyone's noses.
I think he's legitimately some sort of psychopath.
No matter what, cheating in a video game is just extremely sad. It makes you a pretty sad person.
In 2023, a cheating scandal rocked the world of Geometry Dash, when a player known as SpaceUK was outed as having hacked every single major level he had verified. Based on an average viewer's approximate knowledge of how Geometry Dash works, cheating in the game sounds completely arbitrary. And at certain levels, it is. Like I said earlier, cheating in single-player games is perfectly fine. So nobody is going to be mad at you if you speed hack Stereo Madness. But there's a vast community of Geometry Dash players who regularly create amazing levels. And as you can imagine, the community has created some insanely difficult ones. Just by taking one look at some of the hardest levels, it makes sense how top players could end up sinking months into verifying them. See, in order to prove to the game that your level is physically possible, you must first complete it yourself in the editor. The harder the level is made, the harder it becomes to verify. So with top players spending months to verify some of the hardest levels there are, they can become quite passionate about completing them first. When a creator creates a level that would be considered by the unofficial demon list as one of the hardest, it is often beyond the creator's raw skill set, and so they assign the level to a verifier, often multiple. So it can become sort of a race to the finish line. A while back, a new top 1 hardest demon had been made, a level called Slaughterhouse. In 2021, its verification had been assigned to SpaceUK, among other players, and he eventually verified it on October 24th. However, the level was originally intended to be verified by Doggy, another very skilled player. He completed the level himself on December 19th, but he would be placed as the true verifier after a video was released on April 25th, 2023 that definitively outed SpaceUK as a hacker. Of course, that's only one player a record had been stolen from. SpaceUK had been placed as the verifier of several other major top demons on the community-made demon list, almost all of which he ended up admitting to having hacked. SpaceUK was rank 1 uncontested for a long time, demotivating anyone in rank 2 for that time. The whole scandal had a ton of implications, most of which I don't have time to get into. Essentially, what SpaceUK has done to the GD community has ruined important parts of its history. Despite any arbitrary attempts to make it better, cheating can irreversibly tarnish important competitive records, and in this case, it also made lots of people very angry and upset. The craziest part is that nobody had ever directly suspected SpaceUK of hacking for years. Despite his suspiciously fast climbing in skill to the point he feigned being at, he was genuine enough to fool the entire community, at least for a few years. Cheaters must use lies and deception in order to maintain the facade, but sometimes it's not lying about yourself, rather, it's lying about something else. To take a step away from video games, I think it's time we enter the realm of technology. Lots of people have visions of new technology that they believe will serve humanity for the better, the goal usually being to solve some kind of issue, or at least make a particular activity even easier. In the world of tech, there are lots of scams and knockoffs, but sometimes a successful product is so ridiculous that it makes you wonder how it ever got past the fundraising stage. In 2016, the world was presented with a striking new technological advancement when Doug Evans announced a new appliance called the Juicero, which was meant to be innovative, but that was never the case, even in theory. The entire purpose of the appliance was to squeeze juice out of pre-packaged fruits or vegetables into a glass. Initially, the Juicero was priced at $699 US, but in January the following year it was cut down to $399. They had planned to make this cut much later, but the machine was selling twice as many juice packets than anticipated. These juice packets, which could be bought for around $5 to $7, nearly twice that of what you could buy in a different container, did not by any metric require the machine for the juice to be transferred to a glass. You could use whatever tool you wanted to apply enough pressure, and despite the company's pleading, you could even use your hands. Something that was originally shown in a video mocking the ridiculousness of the machine. Jeff Dunn claimed that the machine was calibrated to deal with all types of fruits and vegetables differently, and that the value of Juicero is more than a glass of cold-pressed juice. Much more. But no matter what he said, ultimately the entire machine was unnecessary, and way over-engineered. The concept was so ridiculous it has often been analyzed as something that symbolizes everything wrong with Silicon Valley. In the beginning, when Juicero started funding in 2013, the company made $118 million from prominent VCs such as Google Ventures and Kleiner Perkins, and even Campbell Soup. The original CEO, Doug Evans, described himself as Steve Jobs in the pursuit of juicing perfection, with his Juicero that could apply 4 tons of force. Or as he put it, enough to lift 2 Teslas. Beyond the absurdly simplistic functionality of the appliance, one of the most laughably ridiculous features is the fact that it had to be connected to Wi-Fi for the setup. Supposedly, this was to scan a barcode on the juice packets to check for freshness, and if, God forbid, there was any slight lapse in freshness, the packets will be rendered incompatible with the machine. The only thing more absurd than a vegetable squeezer is a vegetable squeezer that must be connected to Wi-Fi. In April of 2017, after the machine was ridiculed for its functionality, the company offered a 30-day refund window to anyone who was unsatisfied with their purchase of the Juicero, even if they bought it for the $700 launch price. Not long before this, a competitor that had stepped into the ring would challenge the existence of the Juicero. A new kitchen juicer called the Juisir focused on fixing the Juicero's biggest issues, the main one highlighted by employing reusable bags of your own cut-up fruits and vegetables that could be placed into the appliance and squeezed out. It also sported a whopping double that of the Juicero's squeezing force with 8 tons. Not to mention that the machines looked practically identical. Jeff Dunn obviously did not like this and decided to file a complaint in federal court against the Juicir. He claimed that the product infringed on a patent the Juicero was granted in November 2016, as well as violating Silicon Valley Company's trade dress and trademark rights. Jeff Dunn was clearly proud of the Juicero's ability to connect to Wi-Fi and deny any expired juice to be used in the machine, and he criticized the Juicero for lacking in that regard. Jeff Dunn's complaint claims, "The Juicero press has received substantial media coverage and praise," and further accused Juisir of seeking to trade on Juicero's commercial recognition and goodwill and to free ride on Juicero's investment in research, development, and marketing. Jeff Dunn also claimed that the name Juisir was too similar to the name of his own product, and they basically told him that was the point, saying, such use was and is intended to confuse and deceive customers. The lawsuit didn't seem to go anywhere. But strangely, neither did the Juicir. The official Kickstarter page for the product amassed $579,384, and it says the last update was on January 15th, 2019, the previous handful of updates being about the product being shipped out to its consumers. Strangely, there is still a pre-order button on the Kickstarter page, and the Juicir website no longer exists. There is really little to no information on this thing. However, on the Juicero side, things didn't end well either. Jeff Dunn had ambitious goals for the Juicero. He once claimed he could see a Juicero in a McDonald's in 5 years. But at some point, he realized that the product simply wasn't making a sustainable amount of money, and in September of 2017, he made the decision to stop selling the Juicero entirely. In a blog post, he stated, "After selling over 1 million produce packs, we must let you know that we are suspending the sale of the Juicero press and produce packs immediately." Since then, the Juicero has always been remembered as that one ridiculous product that got far too lucky in its fundraising. Sometimes it isn't about the product itself that's ridiculous. Sometimes your product doesn't even need to exist for it to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars. In 2014, a concept video showcasing a brand new innovative tech invention was uploaded to YouTube. The video features a bracelet that projects a smartphone screen onto the forearm. It shows that the device functions identically to a real phone and can be used anywhere, outside, on the go, and even in the tub. Anyone who saw this video would be easily impressed and likely want to buy one for themselves. And luckily, the release of the device was promised by the company behind it. The founders, Guillaume Pommier and Pascal Pommier, had set a fundraising goal of $500,000, and in just a couple years it exceeded that goal by 26%. In 2015, they uploaded a video of their first working prototype, dubiously claiming it works on every skin tone and even outside in bright daylight. In 2016, they promised backers of $250 a full discount upon the release of the device, and by the end of 2016, they closed public donations at 126% of the goal. Of course, they never actually delivered on that promise. Their very last update post on the website was from July 29, 2017, in which Guillaume claimed that they were hard at work developing the bracelet, and that whatever the issues, whatever the challenges, whatever the comments, we're still here. But unfortunately for them, they weren't able to keep their word, as if honestly trying to make innovative technology was ever really their goal. In fact, it seems the entire thing was a scandal. In 2021, the website was taken down, and Guillaume Pommier hasn't been active on social media since. Many of these elaborate schemes involve a company pulling one over on the consumer. But what about when an act of dishonesty from a consumer is made to pull one over on the company?
Just gotta steal these boots.
When you steal something from an individual, you're cheating someone out of their ownership of an item. Shoplifting is riskier, but thieves will end up getting more valuable items. High risk, high reward. Shoplifting is a crime, but the morality is debatable, philosophically speaking. If you stole someone's wallet, for example, it would render a possession of theirs inaccessible to them. The issue would be that stealing from an individual is morally wrong. But if you stole a candy bar from Walmart and got away with it, it's not like Walmart's executives are going to find out about it and care. Would it be immoral to steal a piece of trash from someone's pocket? Steal from the rich and give to the poor is the phrase that originated from the character Robin Hood. And while the phrase makes sense in theory, why should there be a double standard? Even if it would help those who need help, does that make stealing okay? In the real world, there's a saying with a similar sentiment: all billionaires are inherently evil. When taking this in a completely logical way, it doesn't make sense. If some random person found $1 billion on the street, they wouldn't be inherently evil, but obviously that's pedantic. What that saying means is that all billionaires currently in the world are evil. The only way to feasibly obtain such vast wealth would be through means that involve improperly compensating those working underneath. However, a large percentage of billionaire wealth is in property value. It's practically imaginary. You can't steal something imaginary, right? Well, let's talk about another form of criminal activity commonly referred to as theft. Thousands, if not millions, of people pirate material online all the time. Also known as illegally downloading, it is the act of obtaining digital copies of things like movies or video games from an unofficial source. It's actually frighteningly easy for people to pirate material, and even though your ISP can see if you're visiting a piracy site, they don't have any real reason to care, making it even easier. Everyone has seen that one anti-piracy PSA, "You wouldn't steal a car," which has become a meme on the internet due to the absurdity of the claim. Obviously, stealing a car is completely incomparable to pirating media. The real-life counterpart would be perfectly duplicating a car and taking that one instead, which is what you're doing when you download something digitally. You're only making a copy of it. Piracy isn't even comparable to stealing a car in a legal sense, the difference being that piracy is considered copyright infringement. There are plenty of movies and video games that are hosted by their creators for free, but still you legally can't host somebody else's media on your own site. That goes against copyright law. Once again, the morality of online piracy is debatable. If you illegally download a Nintendo game to play on an emulator, it's not like the company will lose anything. But it becomes an issue within the purview of indie games. Indie developers are actively in need of the money, and they would absolutely benefit from it. You could say that pirating an indie game would be no different than just not playing the game at all, but that fundamentally disregards the concept of trade. To obtain the experience of playing the game, you have to pay for it. Thankfully, plenty of people don't pirate media, which is why the illegally downloading this game won't hurt the company mindset works. If everyone was pirating media, then it would be a problem and something would be done about it. Pirating indie material is generally far more frowned upon, as the copyright holder is pretty much completely powerless to do anything about it. It's something I think is comparable to the world of online art. Online artists face a very real challenge with art theft. If you find a small artist online, it's the easiest thing in the world to just repost it somewhere else and claim that you made it. It's actually unbelievable how effortless it is. I've seen art posts with like 300 upvotes from someone claiming to have created the art, despite a handful of comments claiming to have found the original artwork using reverse image search. It's just as easy to get away with it. The most common solution to prevent art theft is to watermark your work. It helps not only with art theft, but it also ensures that anyone who finds the work will know that you made it, preventing you, the creator, from becoming detached from the work. But a watermark is not perfect. While art thieves may be discouraged from stealing a work with a watermark present, they might just end up stealing it anyway, because most people don't even read them. But couldn't they just remove the watermark? Well, yes, they could, but that's not a fair point. It takes a decent amount of effort and Photoshop knowledge, and most thieves aren't going to go to all that effort when they could just find a work that isn't watermarked. If you're an online artist, I highly encourage you to watermark your work. But sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes the thief isn't concerned with people knowing this stolen artwork, because the final product will look completely different. Now, I'd like to preface this segment by saying that for the purposes of this video, I do not have the time to get into all the minutiae and the morality of AI, so this will be somewhat surface level. Anyway, AI art is a topic of discussion that has been very prevalent on the internet in recent years, mainly because the morality of it is such a complicated issue. Most visual AI models, well, pretty much all visual AI models work by scraping and studying literal billions of images on the internet, and creating an image from what it's learned and what it thinks an image looks like. There's way more to it than that, but that's the general idea. These images that are scraped can be anything: a photograph, or what people are mostly concerned with, an artwork taken without permission. Though these two things aren't unlike each other. The people building these models couldn't get permission. They would need to ask millions of artists individually, so instead they just take the art. I'm sure pretty much everyone can see why using a person's artwork like this without permission is immoral. But the bigger issue is that when AI art becomes utterly indistinguishable from human art, then there will no longer be a need for human artists. There's always been the idea of AI taking people's jobs, and in the modern day, that is by no means a fictitious concept. In fact, people are using AI generation in some pretty scummy ways, such as paying an artist for a cheap commission and then altering it to their desires with AI. I think the biggest question regarding AI art is whether or not it is art. According to a court in Washington, a work of art created by artificial intelligence without any human input cannot be copyrighted under US law. But the main issue is whether art is defined by the intentions of the artist or by the emotions evoked afterward. If it is about the intentions of the artist, then shouldn't abstract art be held to the same standard? Since most abstract art is up to interpretation, whether or not you consider AI art to be real art, it's here and it's here to stay. And whether you aspire to make art or generate it with AI, we all have aspirations. Most people would ultimately aspire to achieve them legitimately. Aspirations are commonly referred to as one's dreams, comparable to the unreal fantasy of a dream. A literal dream provides people with the ability to think and form ideas during sleep, a process you tend not to think during. So let's say goodnight and discuss dreaming. Dreams are often thought of as complete nonsense, but it's a kind of organized nonsense. When you try to come up with a dream scenario, it almost never matches the category of nonsense featured in a dream, so to speak. Dreams have this quality of appearing as nonsense, yet they feel almost feasible, since you experience them firsthand. With the order of chaos typically found in dreams, many of them can lead to some interesting ideas. I'm sure we're all familiar with waking up from a dream and feeling an emotion that's somewhere between the lines of confusion and fascination. Sometimes dreams can lead to sort of a revelation, be it a way to sort out an emotion in a way you hadn't thought of before, or rather more of an inventive revelation. Dmitry Mendeleev was a Russian chemist who came up with the idea for the periodic table, but the most interesting thing about his idea is that it quite literally came to him in a dream. He had been trying to figure out how to sort the elements on a table, and one night, he dreamt the perfect sequence, each of the elements filling their required locations perfectly, and immediately after waking up, he scrambled out of bed to write it down. The interesting thing about Mendeleev's realization is that it makes sense. He had spent a great deal of time trying to figure out a proper table of elements. It was probably on his mind most of his time. The ideas for the Terminator and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde also came from dreams. I'm sure movies and stories were often on the minds of these writers. Dreams usually seem to take the form of whatever has been on your mind, sometimes metaphorically. You see all sorts of charts trying to figure out what certain types of dreams mean, and nobody knows for sure, but I think one thing is for sure. They tend to feel pre-organized. Dreams feel like an experience, but they just feel like regular life. In most dreams, you have no idea you're in one, until you do. A lucid dream is one that you have full mental and physical control over, to an extent of course. For most people, a lucid dream starts out as a regular dream and becomes lucid when the sudden realization that you're in a dream sets in. Sometimes it feels like you realize you're in a dream and then immediately wake up. And while many of us find this frustrating, it's been theorized that it's actually the other way around. You realize it's a dream because you're waking up. Lucid dreaming isn't merely a phenomenon, it's a skill that you can develop. There are a few different ways that people can learn to do this, such as wake back to bed, mnemonic induction of lucid dreams, or the most common one, reality checks. Reality checks are typically done at certain times throughout the day, as a consistent reminder that you aren't dreaming. This works because your subconscious is constantly aware of whether or not you're dreaming, so long as you aren't dreaming. Learning to lucid dream essentially trains the awareness of your subconscious within a dream. There are different kinds of reality checks. Some people do multiple in one session, such as reading text or looking up and down, things that would appear telling if you were in a dream. Lucid dreaming is a profoundly strange phenomenon, but also an interesting one. It essentially grants you the full limits of your imagination and escape that approaches the feelings of reality. I've only ever lucid dreamt a couple of times, and like many, my first thought was to attempt flight. But control over a lucid dream is the next step in the learning process. I didn't really have any control, so I just floated up and hit my head on the ceiling. With mastered control over a lucid dream, could you really do anything you want? Could you fly anywhere? Could you fight your favorite superhero? Probably, but more importantly, could you intentionally generate ideas with an efficiency greater than that of what your conscious mind is capable of? Could you generate a scientific breakthrough? Could you generate a plot for the next highest grossing film? But I think the most important question of all is, would any of this be cheating? Assuming that lucid dreaming could be used this way, then perfection of the skill would put you at an advantage over others in your field. Is this unfair, or do they simply need to get better? Obviously, lucid dreaming is a skill that must be developed. It's not cheating, and there aren't rules to these things anyway. But you don't need to break any rules in order to cheat. Would it be cheating if you dreamt up an idea and claimed you had come up with it consciously? People often use the term cheating in situations that don't warrant someone to be called out for it. When we notice something in competition that seems unfair, dishonest, or unsportsmanlike, we tend to look for some way to prevent them from doing it. Cheating can be used as an out to help yourself win, but it can also be used as an out to explain your own relative failure in a way that vilifies your opponent in your mind. You seem a lot better at the game if your failure can be explained by others cheating. Even if you could make the argument that generating ideas through dreaming would be cheating, it would be absurd to genuinely call someone a cheater for doing so. Solely dishonest acts of cheating are far more complicated than solely unfair ones. But paradoxically, all cheating is fundamentally driven by lies. Each one of the topics I've explored in this video have featured some form of dishonesty. Not necessarily lies, but at the very least not properly telling the truth. And now that we understand the wide application of this term, I think that we should all take some time to be a little bit more honest, because nobody wants to end up being accused of cheating. Hey, before you go, I'd like to talk about a few things. First of all, thank you for watching. This is by far my biggest project to date. As I'm saying this, the video has been in production for nearly 8 months. 7 months of research and writing, 4 weeks of editing, all to create the video you just watched. Before this one, my longest video was the PopCap doc, at 22 minutes long. And this one is much longer and has much more information. That video also happens to be my most viewed video of all time. In fact, my past 3 videos have done incredibly well relative to my size, and I really feel like I'm making progress. You may have also noticed that it's been a while since I uploaded a full-on serious video, and that's due to multiple reasons, but the biggest reason is that I've been spending a lot of time on this one. But after it comes out, I'll get back into the groove of making more normal-length videos on a regular basis. Don't get me wrong, I'm going to take a break after this one comes out, but I'm very happy that it's finally done, and while I do need a break, I will definitely come back more motivated than ever. Finishing this video feels like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. That makes it sound like it was a bad journey, but it's more like the weight was a boulder that I just finished carrying to the other side of a long field. And now I can move on to some smaller boulders. Analogies aside, I have some great ideas I can start working on after this, and I can't wait to see what comes next. And finally, before this video comes out, I'm going to rebrand the channel, just to make it a bit more personal to me. The name Tromsodocs was originally just a little name I thought was kinda cool, but now it doesn't really mean anything to me. So I've simply changed the channel name to my name. So that's that. As always, music, sources, all that jazz in the description. Thanks for watching everything. Seriously. Peace.